All right. Welcome back. So much happening, so much going on, and the merger is complete. So, where do we go from here? I think we are just waiting for November, obviously. Oops, there's a little feedback there. So, now that we are just basically waiting to see what happens in November, if it's a fair and honest election, I'm pretty sure we know how this will go. And if it's not, then we will have another repeat of what happened in 2020. That's what is destined to happen. That's what's going to happen. And only God knows for sure. It's all in God's hands. But until then, I figured while I had a few minutes, I'd jump on here and maybe look at some of the latest news because I have been working on a sub book partially related to Kennedy and Trump, focusing more on the assassination attempt on President Trump's life. And so that's been keeping me busy and trying to keep up with that as we wait for more information on the official theory, the official story, what we know for sure, what's speculation, the coroner's report, the autopsy results, the fact that Crooks, the shooter, was cremated without really telling anyone, and before Congress could really do their own investigation. So that's where that is at. It's a crazy, wild twist to this whole thing, to this whole story leading up to November 5th. But for now, I wanted to play. Speaking of that, actually, I think I'm just gonna start this off by playing a little clip here, about 3 minutes.
So why were you spared? You've had to reflect on this alone in the middle of the night in a golf cart riding down the way thinking about it. How do you answer it? Why were you spared?
So there had to be some great power because you just can't say millions to one, millions to one. I used to say 1,000,000 to one. It's much more than that because, again, you have to pull down the sign. There has to be a reason to go right. And I never go right. There's no reason. And not only go right, it's for about 1/8 of a second. It's not just right. It's out of all the time that we're on this planet, it's 1/8 of a second, right? So I shouldn't be with you. So
is there a purpose?
Well,
is there a reason you think you were spared?
I mean, the only thing I can think is that God loves our country and he thinks we're going to bring our country back. He wants to bring it back. It's so bad right now what's happening when you look at the crime, the horrible things that are happening inside our country, and it can be solved. It can be solved fairly quickly. It has to be God. I mean, how can you say it's luck when it's, 20 million to one? Okay. I mean, it's just not possible that I was in that position. It's the only position where that bullet could have missed.
And you believe in God?
I do.
You believe God's hand was in this that day?
I believe so, yeah. I do.
And you talk about the country. You believe you have more to do. You weren't done. You were spared for a reason.
Well, God believes that, I guess. We'll have to see. Number one, I'm in an election with a very vicious group of people. I won the election against Biden. I was up by 17 or 18 points after the debate. And they said, you know what, he's going to lose. They went and told him he's going to lose and we're going to change you out. And he said, no, I'm not going to do it. In fact, he said, only God will change me. But so who knows what happened there. But he said, I'm not leaving. He got 14 million votes and Kamala got none, 0. She ran against him. She got 0. She never made it to Iowa, which is the first state. And here she is. She's on the other side. But, it's like nobody ever had this before. You have an opponent. In politics, you have an opponent and you win or you lose. But you don't have an opponent and then you're doing well against the opponent. They take him out. They give you a new opponent. They give you a nice, fresh opponent. And so I have to win that. And if I win that, that would really serve to say that there's some incredible power up there that wanted me to be involved in saving, and maybe it's more than saving the nation, maybe it's saving the world. I get along with all those tough guys. and Russia wouldn't have gone into Ukraine. You'd have 1 million people living right now. You'd have cities all over Ukraine. I mean, these magnificent cities with the domes and the golden domes and towers, they'd all be up. They're right now demolished. So many, those cities, the country is just demolished. Israel wouldn't have happened. October 7th would have never happened. Iran was broke with me. And I don't want them to be broke, but I don't want them to have a nuclear weapon.
So you think you're meant to take those challenges on? You're meant to serve in that way?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. In thinking about it, it's beyond any of us, I guess, to really know that.
I'm an independent now, so
Humble.
I registered as an independent when I ran.
I'm just going to stop there, but Trump is just a little too humble there. And, I don't know if what happened to him, I don't think it softened him or anything, but I think it may have really helped him get closer to God. And that's what we all need. One of the things that I felt like in 2020 was that, for me personally, is that I got a little too overconfident that it was a shoo-in, that Trump was going to win in 2020. He was able to win in 2016. What would stop him from winning in 2020? And then all the shenanigans happened. All the crazy stuff happened after that. So can't be overconfident this time. I'm definitely not going to make that mistake again. Going to have to pray more about it. It's about whatever God's will, not pray that we get Trump in, but pray that whatever God's will is, that it's, that I understand it, that I go with it, and that I respect it and go forward with it. So I know what I want to be done. I know who I want to win, but the main thing is to pray that God's will be done and that it is something that we will all understand and appreciate and value and understand what to do with that responsibility. Because it will be two very different things if Trump wins or if Trump loses. If Trump wins, a sigh of relief, obviously, but then back to work. If Trump loses, it'll be another dark winter and another dark 4 years for sure. The same stuff. As they go after him, they continue to go after him. And that will continue and that will just get worse. So 2 options there. And I like what Trump said, how he was able to defeated Biden before any votes were cast. It took one debate. And now I guess there's going to be a debate between Harris and Trump. So we'll see what happens with that. But he made this dispatcher there too. If she's smart, she won't debate him. She won't show up and she'll make it virtually impossible. That's her only shot, is to do what Joe Biden did in 2020, is to hide in the basement and let the handlers and let the shadow government, the CIA, the New World Order, all the same thing, the swamp, whatever you want to call it, big pharma, go on and on and on. Let them do their thing and they will help her get into office. That's their plan. That's their goal. Especially now that Trump has Kennedy on his side, Big Pharma is going to have to roll out everything that they can and more to make sure that not only Trump doesn't get into office, but that Kennedy doesn't fare well either. So with that, let's go take a look, because I have not been on X in a while. On Twitter. Wow, I think it's the first time I actually called it X. Let's go take a look at what Kennedy is doing. What is he up to here? Because he is staying busy. He did another speech or an interview yesterday, I believe. I got a lot of clips from his interview with Tucker Carlson. He was on Dr. Phil recently. I haven't looked at that, but there was another speech that he did, and we'll go look at that from Kennedy's YouTube channel. So this is 18 hours ago. A clarion warning from Jeff Sachs. He says Trump and Vance have got it exactly right regarding Ukraine, but be careful. The same basic mindset that propelled war with Russia will also provoke unnecessary, disastrous, and counterproductive wars with Iran and China. that's where, let's see, Iran and China. That's where the neocons want to pivot the war machine next. But these countries are not intrinsically our enemies unless we make them our enemies. There is an alternative, peaceful and mutually beneficial competition, but we will do very well in the competition if we cease squandering our resources on foreign wars and instead rebuild our infrastructure and domestic economy. All right. What else do we got? Oh, okay. Yeah, let me go back to yes, I think this is it right here. It's like an hour long Robert F. Kennedy Jr. live at Limitless Expo. Maybe I'll play a little bit.
And he had RFK Jr. on there. And I was thinking, like, man, this guy really knows his stuff, especially when he started talking about, Middle America and how Middle America is getting kind of edged out right now in so many ways and kind of getting pushed out. And that made me just think so much about what Limitless is, one of the
for everything that you stand for. I wanted to ask, the first question I wanted to ask is, in your book, American Values, which I read,
great book.
It helped me understand what the Democrats stood for, back in the day. You articulate that very well. And of course, it feels like there's a realignment today. Can you explain what's going on with that party?
Yeah, I would say that, first of all, thanks for having me, Ken and Robert. I'm really happy to be here with you. And thank you all for that wonderful welcome when I came out. I would say if you went down the list of policy priorities and values that my father had, that my uncle had, that I would check off every box. And the Democratic Party today, I don't think stands for those things. I would say that the primary issues were the Democratic Party was very concerned with protecting our Constitution, and particularly freedom of speech. And the word liberal is derived from freedom of speech. And that was this core belief that the Democratic Party, that democracy was the foundation stone for democracy, was the free flow of information, and that the best policies would be annealed in the furnace of debate, and then they would rise in the marketplace of ideas. And that was the advantage that democratic systems had over totalitarian systems. Totalitarian systems are much more efficient than democracy. You have one guy at the top who can quickly make decisions, would move very quickly, and that's an advantage for a nation and a society. But it was thought that the advantage for democracy was this clash, this dialectic of ideas, which would give us an advantage in the marketplace. The Democratic Party that I grew up with was anti-war. My uncle, President Kennedy, was asked by his best friend Ben Bradley, who was then the editor of the Washington Post, "What do you want on your gravestone?" And my uncle said, without skipping a beat, he kept the peace. He said the primary job of a president of the United States is to keep the country out of war. He said that he didn't want children in Africa and Asia and Latin America, when they heard about the United States of America, to be thinking of a man in a military uniform with a gun. He wanted them to be thinking of a Peace Corps volunteer. He wanted them to be thinking of the USAID program, the Kennedy Milk Program, which gave milk to.
Isn't it wild now that we've come to this spot? We've come to this place where the anti-war party is the Republicans. I mean, growing up, for me, it was the Democrats. They were the anti-war party. They didn't want war, trying to get us out of war. Everything was anti-war. And now it's okay. Now war is okay because it's on the Democrats' side. It's so wild. It's so wild how these things change, how life can change so quickly. All right, I do want to see what other thing. That's like an hour long video that is on Kennedy's YouTube channel too. So let's see. Financial Freedom Expo. Oh, he's always doing something like this.
first day off in 17 months. We're spending 3 days down here, and it's been great. But look what I just caught. I wanted you to see this. This is a beautiful little lizard. It's called a Cape spiny-tailed iguana. And these lizards,
Always doing something like that.
they're so beautiful. They're this emerald color right now, but later on they'll turn gray, and they get about almost 40 inches long. And they eat mainly flowers and fruits, occasionally, opportunistically, some small animals. But they make great pets. I had them when I was a kid. And they were brought here to Baja by the Seri Indians who canoed over from the mainland, and they were brought to the islands as a food source. I've seen them sold. I've seen the green iguana, which is their cousins, sold in Barranquilla and some of the other markets in the Caribbean, and their eggs are also sold. Females are egg-laden, females, pregnant females are sold. And they cut the eggs out that come out on a string and eat them, and they're kind of a delicacy there. But they were brought here, and they compete with chuckwallas, which were another great pet that I had when I was a kid. And, but it's such a beautiful lizard. Look at that. And don't you wish you had one of these?
Well, I was trying to find the spot in the book where Kennedy actually is talking to his uncle, and he talks about this lizard, which it's the funniest story because Kennedy RFK Jr. goes into the White House, and he's talking to his uncle about this lizard, and finally they realize that the lizard is dead. The lizard is dead. It's dead and gone. Anyways, just some funny stuff there. I guess I can't really find it, but that's okay. I'm going to go to a few more clips here because there is a lot of good stuff that came out. This is from his interview with Tucker Carlson.
I'm an independent now, so I registered as an independent when I ran. And when I talk with President Trump, the thing that we talked about is that that we were going to do a unity government with the independent, not the kind of endorsement that a lot of people make, an endorsement like Abraham Lincoln's team of rivals, where we would be able to continue to differ publicly on issues, but that we would, on the issues that we agree on, that we were going to strive to get into government together in order to make sure that those issues are the priority for our country. And, he was really good about that, and about, me being able to continue on. There's some issues. There's a lot of issues like the border where we agree, and, censorship, the wars, the neocons, the, forever wars, child health epidemics. Those are the most important issues. There's other issues that I'm going to disagree on with President Trump, but he was happy with that. And that's how our country ought to be. We ought to be able to.
So what is this realignment that you mentioned at the outset? Because this does feel like it's bigger than just this November.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a series of these realignments throughout American history. And, there's history books that are written about, the realignments. I think there's about 5 of them. And one of those is clearly happening now, because you see on so many issues, you've had an inversion. The Democratic Party has become the party of the elites. It used to be the party of the poor and the working class. In fact, there was a study that came out just recently that I saw that showed that 70%, that the people who voted for Biden own 70% of the wealth in this country. The people who voted for Trump own 30%. And so
I believe that.
Right. So you're seeing this realignment happen where the elites, where Wall Street, or the big tech, big pharma, the big banking houses are all now Democratic. And that the working class, the middle class, the cops, the firefighters Sean O'Brien, the head of the Teamsters Union, spoke.
Good guy.
The great guy, great guy. Really love him. And even on environmental issues, it's so weird to me because the Democrats have become subsumed in this carbon orthodoxy. And you and I have talked about this, that the only issue is carbon. And what that's done is it's forced them to do something that you should never do if you're an environmentalist, which is to commoditize and quantify everything. So everything is measured by its carbon footprint, how many tons of carbon it produces. And, you're basically, you're putting everything in that kind of box of being able to quantify it and explain its value by numerically. And the reason that we protect the environment is just the opposite of that. The reason that we protect the environment is because there's a spiritual connection. There's a love that we have. I got into the environment because I wanted, this connection to the fishes and the birds and the wildlife and the whales and the Purple Mountains majesty. And that, I understood that the way, God talks to human beings through many vectors, through each other, through organized religion, through the great prophets, through the wise people, the great books of those religions, but nowhere with the kind of detail and texture and grace and joy as through creation. And when we destroy nature, we diminish our capacity to sense the divine, to understand who God is and what our own potential is and duties are as human beings. And that,
I hope what you just said, by the way, is chopped up and put all over every social media platform in the world. When we destroy nature, we degrade our own ability to experience the divine.
Yeah. And that it's not about quantifying stuff. That's what the devil does. He quantifies everything, right? And that is, what he wants us doing. Put a number on it. And the reason we're preserving these things is because we love our children. And it's because we get nature enriches us economically and spiritually and culturally and historically. It connects us to those 10,000 generations of human beings that were here before there were laptops. And it connects us to the most important spiritual lesson. All of the organized religions that we know of today, the central revelation of every one of those religions always occurred in the wilderness. Moses had to go into the wilderness to listen to hear God's voice and see the burning bush. He had to go to the wilderness of Mount Sinai to get the commandments. Muhammad who was a city boy from Mecca, had to go to the wilderness of Mount Hera on a camping trip with his kids and wrestle the angel Gabriel in the middle of the night to have the first stanzas of the surahs of the Quran squeezed from him. Buddha had to go into the wilderness to sit under and wander for years, and then sit under the Bodhigaya tree to get his first revelation of nirvana. And Christ had to spend 40 days in the wilderness to discover his divinity for the first time. And his mentor was John the Baptist, who lived in a cave in the Jordan Valley and ate honey of